Hello, everyone, and welcome in. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute, but first, just a couple of quick items to cover. We will be recording this session and sharing that recording with everybody once it is up and live on our website. And we do also have a question and chat feature, which you can find in the top right corner of your screen. Please feel free to ask your questions. We will have time to go over them at the end. And I see a couple people still joining in. We'll give it a minute here. All right, I see we got some new names in here, so thank you guys for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today, I'm joined by Joe Mastromarino, our Director of North American Sales Engineering here at AttackIQ, where he will be sharing about our new product Ready3 and how you can use it to operationalize CTEM. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Joe.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. And thanks, everybody, for joining. Still getting a little bit of an echo there. Okay, that's a little weird. Still good? Yeah, yep. Okay, cool.
Yep, all good.
No more echo. All right, great. So, yes, like Liz said, my name is Joe Mastromarino, Director of Sales Engineering here at AttackIQ. I've been at AttackIQ for, just shy of 4 years now. I've been in the technology space for about 20 years. Most of that time spent in security, a lot of my time in financial services, spent a lot of time in the SIM world, in the incident response world. So I bring all of that experience here together, and that's why I really love putting all the stuff together in terms of purple teaming. I even went ahead and got some of that certification down there for purple teaming. We'll talk a little bit more about education, especially at the end of this talk here today. But why are we here? We're here to talk about CTEM, operationalizing it, and how we do that here at AttackIQ using Ready3. First, let's state the challenge and really where we're at. We're constantly navigating an increasingly complex security landscape. The attack surface keeps growing, and every new asset, every new identity, every new dependency introduces some risk, yet your teams are constantly drowning in tool sprawl with many overlapping controls that still leave some gaps. Meanwhile, our adversaries are constantly adapting faster, and security teams are really struggling to keep up. Ransomware groups are now operating like enterprises, and we know it. It is big business. Supply chain attacks are surging. Threat actors are leveraging AI to scale their operations. So the reality is that we have our static security controls and some periodic assessments in place, but we really need to ramp that stuff up and do something a little bit more continuous in order to respond to that constantly evolving threat landscape. And then we have things like compliance. We have frameworks like NIST and ISO and CIS that provide some guidance, but we really need something to validate real-world security effectiveness. And our regulators are going to need tangible proof that we're doing something here, that we can measure our risk exposure, and that we're doing something to reduce that risk exposure over time. So we're not just responsible for reducing the risk, we have to translate that security performance into business value. So it's not just about finding the exposures. That's important, but it's not only about that. It's that we have to continuously validate and have that security effectiveness and make those security outcomes quantifiable, actionable, and business relevant. This cycle is difficult. We have to know where to start. And it could be that you start with vulnerability management, or you start with a penetration test, or you start with something. But a lot of times we have alerts that can be a little bit too generic and can miss some context if we don't have that really contextualized with everything else. It's difficult to validate things safely in production continuously. We can't continuously run pen tests. That's expensive. And doing continuous testing like that, especially based on exploits, can be potentially dangerous. We don't want to do anything that's going to really harm our environment. And we have some security teams and tools that could be in silos. And again, if they're not contextualizing against the other, then we could lead to some confusing answers and a little bit of remediation fatigue. So what do we need to do next? We have these questions here. And a lot of times these questions might be without answers. And you've probably seen or heard or have had those questions asked to you. How do we know that we're doing better than we were yesterday or last week or last month? How do we properly prioritize and justify our security investments? These are the questions that we see as the CISO, the security manager. Where should I be focusing on my remediation and testing efforts, and against what attackers? Where should I be putting my effort? That's really what all three of these roles are asking. And then we get down to the detailed analyst or the engineer. What specific vulnerabilities should I remediate? What TTPs, tactics, techniques, procedures, what things do I need to test, and where are they? All of these need to be fed by a system that is putting all of this information together. And what we need is that context, that shifting of left, so to speak. Now, traditionally, security teams operate on the right side of this timeline that you see right here, that exposure validation, what do I test? So you conduct your breach and attack simulations or pen tests only after those threats become apparent. Then to be proactive, you try to start introducing attack surface scanning to spot the known exposures earlier, but that also needs to account for your tactics, techniques, procedures that the attackers are using in the wild. Once you start integrating your live threat intelligence, then you're able to start really shifting left, because rather than just scanning, we're also able to prioritize those exposures based on whether or not they align with the adversary behaviors for any given industry or for you. Then after we're able to push further left, are we able to do anything that will predict where the attackers might strike even before they've shown up? And that we need a little bit more of that predictive posture validation. We can analyze those indicators. We can take a look at what adversaries have done before and reveal their potential moves. So we can start to path out what those attacks are going to look like as we put all of these things together. So we start talking then about the three pillars of CTEM, the continuous threat exposure management. We're going to use that acronym a whole lot today. So we look continuously and analyze the data that we have. We're always looking at our attack surface for new assets and new vulnerabilities, because our environment today is not our environment yesterday. This stuff doesn't remain static all the time. We have to constantly be looking for what may be that new area of exposure. Maybe somebody plugged something in some part of the environment. Maybe somebody introduced some new device into the environment that we haven't quite scanned yet or haven't quite looked at yet. So all of these things can constantly be changing. We prioritize context. So we use the knowledge that we have of the threats along with the environment to show what the real impact would be based on any given vulnerability. How many times have we all gotten this question as we look at our vulnerability management data of, okay, great, this is a high or critical vulnerability, but is anybody actually using this, or is this an actual threat to our environment? So we have to assess that, and we have to take a look at that under the context of the rest of the environment. Is there any way to get to this box? Is there any way to use the accounts that are going to go along with this, that those accounts have any access to anything? And then, of course, continuously validating and then remediating those things that are there. So let's validate that this is indeed a true positive. Let's do some testing and see whether or not this thing actually works. And then let's do some remediation. Once we know what those targeted problems are, it's a lot more digestible to be able to say, hey, we had these 3 or 4 problems over here, rather than I got 4,000 vulnerabilities. Where do I start? Here, at least we've proven that these are actual problems. And the way that we then do that is by looking at this CTEM cycle. And this is what we'll be going through in the platform. I'm actually going to show you that in the Ready3 platform, and we'll show you exactly how that works. And now there are 5 steps that'll go along with this, and these things just work continuously. Your scoping and your discovery, these really go hand in hand. So you're aligning any testing that you're doing with your business priorities. So what are the most important things to you? What are your business critical assets? What are the things that the boundaries that you need to draw around where your business is? So then how do we know where we should begin our discovery? And that's really number 2 right there, is taking a look across your attack surfaces. Let's take a look at your vulnerability management data. Let's take a look at some discovery that we can do internally, externally, your internal networks, your external network. We can also take a look at things related to your not only your vulnerability management data, but your other endpoint related data. You can take a look at your Active Directory. We can take a look at exposed network services, accounts, things like that. So we can discover all of these different things that might surface not only vulnerabilities, but also some misconfigurations, which can also lead to security issues. Now let's prioritize these things. We're going to leverage the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We're going to leverage some agentic AI that we've already developed and put into this platform to help to assess and to rank those exposures by their severity, their impact, their relevance to you, and then direct your efforts towards mitigating those most critical risks. And I'm going to show you what that looks like when you look at it in the platform. Then validate this. So we can start to take a look at, okay, great. So now we've already had this platform in place to do this breach and attack simulation testing. This remains a vital part of the CTEM framework. So now let's take all that information and say, well, we suggest that you do this test, and this test. And these are all using those same scenarios, those agents that we have. We can even do agentless testing in certain situations to be able to test out whether or not we've validated that these controls are working as intended. And if not, you have this step 5, this mobilization right here, where you would say, okay, these are our real exposures. We've done this testing. Here are the areas where we have issues. So let's go issue some tickets. Let's go get some work done and take a look at whether or not we can fix these things. And then once those things are fixed, go back, retest, and then continue moving on. And then the cycle goes on. And that's the CTEM framework and how we're going to work this using the AttackIQ Adversarial Exposure Validation platform. Now, if you've looked at Ready before, yes, like I said, the breach and attack simulation testing is an absolutely vital part of that. It is not going anywhere. It is absolutely still a part of this platform. What we've really added in here is part of an acquisition that we did earlier this year with a company called Deep Surface that does a lot with bringing in all of this information. So doing a lot of that discovery, doing that prioritization of the vulnerabilities, doing that attack path mapping, and showing us how we can point out where all of those issues are. And that's where a lot of this new stuff comes in here that you're seeing on the slide, because a lot of this stuff was stuff that was already here. So using the customer ecosystem, pulling all this data in, but also pulling in more stuff. So pulling in that vulnerability data, pulling in cyber threat intelligence, doing a lot of that discovery is all part of what we were able to do with the integration of surface technology into AttackIQ.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Joe. Vesco had a question that I think is good to bring up right now that you're talking about it.
Sure.
They said for discovery, is scanning for vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and exposures done by AttackIQ, or is it ingested from other third-party tools?
The question is, do we do the scanning ourselves or do we bring it in from a third party? The answer is a blend of both. Because what we're doing is the vulnerability management data we're going to pull in. We're not going to try to replace your Qualys, your Nessus, your Rapid7, things like that. We're going to leverage that data that you already have. So bring all that data in, and then the rest of the discovery data, and I'll show you how this works in the platform during the demonstration. We'll do the rest of the discovery ourselves. We'll just use the assets that you already have and a series of scripts that are already available to be able to do that internal discovery and even some of that external discovery to find our complete attack surface and what your environment looks like. And I hope that answers your question. Please follow up if I haven't, though. So where does this then lead is we have this big circle sitting in the middle, and what we're going to be talking about is specifically the Ready and to a lesser degree the Flex portions of the platform here, because Ready has always been really a managed method of being able to do breach and attack simulation, and now we're also adding in all the rest of this capability to make it an AV platform to really help you use the CTEM framework to pull together all of this information to give you those recommendations on where you should be going to further shore up your defenses. The things that you see over here on the right-hand side, this exposure management section, a lot of these things here are new. So the security control validation has always been there. That's been our bread and butter for many years. The active threat monitoring, we're adding in here, the attack path management, attack surface management, vulnerability prioritization, risk scoring, all of these things get added in here. And the outputs that we get at the end of this, we're not able to better scale offensive testing because we're not just trying to throw all the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, but let's do this in a little bit more of a targeted fashion. We can optimize our defensive posture by really testing for the things that matter to us and the things that we really would be vulnerable to. And of course, reducing our exposure because we're getting a real risk-based calculation for the things that we're doing here. So we're able to target our efforts on reducing risk inside of the environment. If there are no additional questions, Liz, I'll move on, but are there any other questions that I can answer here or the things that I should be looking at in terms of the demo?
Yeah, we got a question from Rich. He asked what we mean by agentic AI here and what is the role of this capability in the AEV platform.
Sure. So what we're doing with a lot of this agentic AI, and you see this right here in the middle, this AVA AI portion. A lot of what we're doing here is we are dynamically selecting content based off of the things that we're pulling in. So the cyber threat intelligence that we're pulling in, as well as the discovery data that we have, we're looking at this in terms of course, always the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And since all of our content has already been mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, we're dynamically selecting the content based off of those tags that are there. So a big part of the role that this has in the AV platform is selecting that content and making sure that it's the most appropriate based off of the MITRE ATT&CK tactics, techniques, procedures, so that we're putting the most relevant content to the front. That's really the role of at least at the very beginning of this agent that we've developed for using AVA in this context. Any other questions that I should hit before we get into the demo?
Yeah, we got another one. They always come when we get a couple. Is it going to explain the applicability factor of the discovered vulnerability?
Yes, I will.
Cool.
Okay.
I think that's good for now.
Yep. Okay, let me go ahead and dive into the demo. Zip over to here, and of course I got logged out because why wouldn't I? Give me 1 second to get myself logged back in here. Perfect. Okay. So now we're back in the platform, and what we're going to review here is we're going to take a look, and really I'm going to thread everything through this CTEM status that you see up here, because I told you we're going to really go right through the CTEM framework using this platform. And I want to show you how we then go through that cycle over and over again in order to ideally reduce risk, as well as find our exposures and reduce those as well. So the exposure score, why do we have this 45%, this B exposure score right here? So how do we calculate this? We're looking at this from a couple of different ways. We're looking at this through the discovery, and I'm going to show you how we do that discovery as well as the validation of those. So the discovery is everything that, of course, that we found, and then the validation is everything that we have said, hey, this is something that we've gone ahead and done the testing, and then we went back and validated those exposures. So in order to do the discovery, I'm going to hit right here on this CTEM status, this discovery section right here. Once I get the information back, it's going to show me these are all the things that are here. I have processes here, I have users, I have applications, I have network services, I have Active Directory. So all of this stuff is going to come in. The question is, how do we get it here? The way that we get it here is when I take a look at my configuration. There's a few different ways to do this. I can schedule this. And that's really the ideal way to do this, is to really schedule these things out. And actually, when I go back to here and configure, there we go. I can do this two different ways. I can do this point in time, or I can do this continuously. When I run this in a point in time, I have these packages that I can run. I did mention before that we have Ready and we have Flex. Ready, when we have it running on specific machines, there is an agent that is going to be sitting there that is always going to be running the content here. And Flex is an agentless way of being able to do testing that we've introduced as part. It really goes alongside the Ready platform, although it is its own unique and distinct capability. But the other thing that we've noticed is that we can also have these discovery packages run using Flex. So you can even have these discovery packages running off of really as many machines as you want, and as many as possible is really the ideal thing to do some internal network scanning, to do some Active Directory scanning, to do some endpoint scanning. And all of these things can be done using Flex. So you don't have to install anything. You just need to take this package and run it any way you want to try to run a package on a machine. So it's very, pardon the term, flexible in that context. But yes, you can absolutely do these things really anywhere you want. If you have this test capability here, and then we add on a little bit more as well, because now this is part of the agent technology that you have installed on those boxes. Now the agent, very lightweight, does not hook into the kernel, does not provide protective capabilities. All it is doing is checking in with the platform about once a minute or so, looking for work. And then once there's work to do, it will download wherever it needs, unpack, stage, and then run it. So you notice this again has Active Directory, endpoint, external network scanning it can do as well, especially if it's installed on the external network and internal network. You can get your agent installer right here, so you can have support for Windows, Linux, Mac machines, really whatever you need, and how to properly install this and whitelist it based off of your technology. The other thing you can add in here is, now this is the scanning information that you can bring in using these agents. So I can bring in stuff from Rapid7, Tenable, Qualys. I can bring in EDR data. So I can bring in Defender, SentinelOne, Falcon. So all of these things can come in using these agents as well. When I want to do this, and these are all point in time, like I said, when I want to do this continuously, I can have these tests run on a scheduled basis, and that's really the best way to do it, from as many test points as I need to. What's my external network discovery? What's my local network discovery? Who's doing that test? And again, who's doing all of my VMS and EDR data gathering? So that's where all the discovery data comes from. And then once we take a look at that discovery data, that's how we're able to then use that. If I'm running the Flex packages, I can also take the information and upload it right from here. I can just take that data, zip, put it up right up here, and then it will ingest all of that data. Once we start to put all of that data together, we can now start to prioritize and recommend things that are here. To do that, I'm going to take a look at my analysis section. You see I have this prioritization, and that's really where the analysis section is going to take me. I have a few different areas that I can focus on here. So I can focus on my exposures, I can focus on my vulnerabilities. There's lots of stuff that's here already. I'm going to focus first on my my asset risk. That's really where I want to go. So I take a look at my asset risk. And there are attack paths and there are other things that I have here, but I really want to look at some of these assets by risk. How do we score these risks? Because you see I have everything from highest all the way down to minimal. Let's take a look at this just by the numbers real quick without going into the rubric for it. But I have, say, for instance, this asset over here. I have 1,300 vulnerabilities on this box. I have 19 missing patches on it, and I have 59 different attack paths on this machine. Whereas if I were to go down to, say, this machine over here, I have 508 vulnerabilities. I have 13 different missing patches, but I have no attack paths. So I have no way of leveraging the things that are here. It's not good that I have these vulnerabilities here, but at the same time, it's not introducing any more risk to my environment because of the fact that they merely exist. Now let's take a look at one of these and examine why it has such a high level of risk. And I'll take a look at this one right here, this one that has the vulnerabilities and missing patches and like 67 different attack paths. So this one, for instance, will have, you see it has 14.8% risk impact. And I want to ask about that. This reflects the total risk, and it's all based off of the vulnerabilities, the reachable attack paths, and the business criticality of this asset. If I were to remove these potential exposures here, so these vulnerabilities, and get everything else patched, then it would reduce the risk in my environment by 14.86%. I have also here my effective business impacts. I'm going to show you how we get to those as well. Something else that's really important here is when I look at the vulnerabilities discovered, I can also see these KEVs, because not only are we looking at the vulnerabilities themselves, I'm matching this up with these known exploited vulnerabilities. So we're showing you the ones that are actively being used, not just the ones that are simply there. So this is a really important distinction that I like to have here. So just because they are maybe lower or minimal, these are also things that are being used and are really valuable to understand and know that they're there. Now, where does all of this lead? Because now I have all of this information. Let's now put it somewhere. And that's why I lead all this up to when I get to my attack paths. My attack paths, you can see right here, I have a number of different ways that I can be an attacker, and I can leverage a number of different ways of attacking this environment here. This is now the culmination of all of that information, all of that discovery information, put all of that together and say, these are the different ways that we can map out an attack from start to finish, starting from the attacker outside the environment to, and now I can start to mouse over and see all of these different branches that we can do and all of these actions that we can take. So an account here can be leveraged with any of these 100 vulnerabilities, with the highest risk of this being this CVE right here. I can take a look at then any of these branching paths, and I can see all the way down to this business impact over here, that we can get right access to this particular folder. Or I can get access to these couple of different databases using SQL Server that's on this box over here. Or I can get different access to different folders. These colors also mean things as well on the screen. So like this green dot over this user account means that this user account has been used recently. So this is something that they really should be able to get access to and be able to do something with. And when I see one of these yellow boxes over one of the paths, I can click on that, and it will also give me, hey, this is a test that you can do right now that can help you to close off that particular pathway. I take a look at my options here, and I can say, okay, this one I can use with ready. So there's no agent on this box right now, so I would need to put an agent on that box and then run this particular test. Once that's done and that agent is checking in, then I can go ahead and run that test. So it's immediately showing me all of the things that I can do to close off those attack paths. That's what it's doing for me. I can choose to combine this. I can choose to separate out all of these paths, whatever is easier on my eyes and whatever I want to be able to explain a little bit more easily. I can see all of the attack paths here, because right now it's really just focusing on the ones that are of the highest risk. But I can take a look at some of the other ones as well, and I can add those to my list. So I can absolutely pull together other attack paths here and see what else is available to me. As I do that, and you see I'd be able to work my way all the way through this list. And as I take a look at, go back to my analysis here. So I'd be able to work my way through all of those assets, because now it's showing me where all of those highest risks are. The next step there, because as I go back home, I've done my prioritization. So the next thing I need to do is my validation. So it was starting to expose to me all of those tests that could be run. So I take a look now at the assets that have pending tests for them. I take a look at this asset over here, and I look at the options that I have of this content filter baseline. It's going to tell me, so you see now it's reasoning out why this type of testing needs to be done. Now this particular network segment has never been validated against network threats. That's obviously a problem. This is, again, is all stuff that we've never seen before. So I have a couple of different options here. I can install the test point, or I can just run this as a flex package. It's entirely up to me on how I want to run that. So whenever it gives me the option there, I can do either one. So after I've done that testing, I can go ahead and say whether or not this has been validated. And I go through each and every one of these for all of these assets. Once I've done that, once I've done all of that testing, you see I could do all of this testing also on a regular basis, which is probably good for some things like the content filter baseline and all of those things that should be running on a regular basis, that I can schedule these things to run on a regular basis. This is part of that testing that we've always been doing with Ready. And you run it on the assets where you want to run this every single week. So now you always have that information and it's always fresh in the platform here. So now you start to do that validation. What you get at the end of that validation is you start to now see these exposures. That's what you want to get to next. And I see my exposures here, and I can group these by, and right now it's just grouped by the level. I can also group this by the attack tactics. And I can take a look at one of these here. So this persistence achieved by abusing OS capabilities. It'll give me a description of what this testing was, how we did this, what are the mitigation recommendations for taking care of this. And I can also see the raw results. So any of the testing that we did, I would be able to see from the perspective of that test point, what did we do here? And why did we say that this is an exposure? So yeah, we did not prevent this. So what's the next thing that we need to do here? Now, after the mitigation, of course, has been done, I can go ahead and click on this little validate mitigations button. Nice handy dandy button that I could just go ahead and rerun that test. But then when I go back to my exposures, there's something else that I can do here too, which is that part of that mobilization effort. That's really that last bit. Is I'm looking at the exposures and I'm saying, what do I need to do next? Well, that's why we have these create ticket buttons over here as well. That I can create a ticket over in Jira, ServiceNow, and be able to say, yeah, this is the summary of it, and do a little write-up in here for what this is, and we'll be able to help you create a ticket that goes to the right people to then be able to say, hey, we have work to do. It came from right here. Let's go ahead and do it. So as I go back to my home screen again, this is now, again, we've gotten right back to the beginning again. So we continue to do our discovery. It continues to prioritize the findings that we have and give us more of those attack paths so we can figure out what's the highest risk to our environment. We continue to validate all of those using the testing capabilities that we've always had here on the platform. And that will continue to send up those exposures to us, that we can go ahead and mobilize our efforts to eradicate those things inside of the environment, immediately retest, and then get us back to a much better state, and continuing to increase and improve that exposure score over time. We continue to get that risk score much, much better, because as we get more coverage within our environment and as we continue to do that testing, that's how that score continues to raise up. So that's really what we're doing here in terms of filling out that complete CTEM lifecycle right here within the Ready3 platform. So giving you all of that capability, all of this is right here on the platform. You discover everything, you prioritize it all using the platform. All of that is done for you after you bring in that discovery. It's when you start to get to the validation, the mobilization, that's really where you come in. But you've been given a much more contextualized version of that information to be able to direct your efforts more effectively. And that's a lot of the value is understanding that you no longer have this massive wall of vulnerabilities and missing patches that you say, oh, I got to do all of this stuff right now. You now have that prioritized list to be able to say, okay, let's do this, then this, then this, then this, because we all only have finite resources. And of course, there's always going to be more vulnerabilities tomorrow. So let's focus on the things that are going to be the most impactful to us first and continue to do that testing over time. Let me see if I can kind of scroll through some of the questions that I have here. I saw another one here that was much, much earlier on. Any major differences between control testing and CTEM. Control testing is a part of CTEM, as we've seen. The CTEM framework contains control testing, really within that validation section and that mobilization section. So that's where I would place it. It's right there within validation. And then when you do that mobilization, then you're going to go ahead and do that validation again. That you have indeed improved your controls by way of that testing. Is there, I was going to explain the applicability factor of the discovery vulnerability. Yeah, I think through that, the applicability of the discovered vulnerability that comes with the prioritization. So all of those risk factors come with the vulnerabilities. So all of that is in the, just to show you that one more time, it's here in the attack paths. So I'm going to take a look at these attack paths here. It is going to show me the applicability of that CVE. So when I click on that guy, it is going to show me the vulnerabilities that go right along with it. So that's how we apply that there. Let's see. The agentic AI is parsing the threat intel data to your MITRE attack framework. Yes. So we're pulling all the threat intel data in, we're pulling all the discovery data in, we're mapping that to the MITRE attack framework, and that's how we're doing the initial content matching. So you are right on that. Another question there from Vesco. Scanning for misconfiguration requires knowing good config. Do you scan against CIS benchmarks or custom baselines, or does that come from CSPM? Not a question that's been brought to me yet. Definitely a good one. That's something that I can research for you. I can ask my devs about that and see if we're going to have different levels of scanning based on benchmarks. But that's definitely something that I want to make a note of. Liz, we can save these questions after this, right?
Yes, we'll have the questions after, so we can answer any additional ones. We can send out emails too if we need to.
Fantastic, because I definitely want to follow up on that one. Thank you for that question, Vesco. How do we know that a vulnerability is exploitable? Is it based on known past exploits? Is it based on it being reachable in the network versus package loaded in the memory versus vulnerable function of the package actually called at runtime? What we're using for that is we're matching these up to the KEV database that's coming out of CISA, and we also contributed to that project along with the MITRE Ingenuity Center for Threat Informed Defense. So that's how we know that a vulnerability is exploitable, is we're using that and matching it up with the KEV database. And let's see, how often does the tool check common missing patch versions? We're doing discovery really as often as you can put it in there. So at the very least, you should be doing for any of the agents that you have installed, you should be doing that at least weekly. And as much discovery as you can do, really, the more the better. So as many of those discovery packages as you can run, that's how often it's going to check to determine missing patches and any other information that it can go ahead and gather. And I just lost my questions window, and I think I've gotten through all the questions here.
Yep, I think we covered them all unless anybody has some last minute ones. You can also feel free to email us, email Joe, sales@attackiq.com, inform@attackiq.com. Oh, we got one more.
Oh, okay, and I got a couple other slides I'll get through at the end here.
Yep, that last question is any major differences between control testing and CTEM?
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that question earlier. Control testing is a part of CTEM. So if I scroll back just a little bit, it's part of, I would say, step 4 right here under this validation section, because it's all part of what we've been doing all up to this point. So that's where we would be putting that. That's where we'd be putting that information. That's where we'd be putting that capability is underneath step 4 in validation. So it's all part of CTEM. And then I got a couple of. Okay, I got one more question. I'm going to hit that right at the end. So we got a couple of additional resources as well to make sure that everybody's aware of. One of them being, of course, AttackIQ Academy. That is our award-winning educational platform that is completely free. You can go ahead and sign up for it. It's academy.attackiq.com. You can always go ahead and sign up for it. We have over 70,000 students worldwide today. 5 different learning paths, a number of different wellness courses as well, over 8.5 million hours spent learning with us. These courses can also be used for CPE credits. So if you have any certifications and you need some CPE credits for that, that's another great use of that. And like I said, completely free. We do not charge for that, and we're constantly putting out more content for it. So definitely go ahead and leverage that and tell your colleagues about it as well. We do also have our adversary research team that's constantly researching and looking out for new threats that are in the space. So it's going to put out, and this is our team of malware reverse engineers, security experts, incident responders, blue teamers. They're always looking out for this content and building out more different types of tests. And when you take a look at our research, again, all completely free, that you would be able to see all of this stuff and how it maps back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So definitely take a look at that, attackiq.com/research. Take a look at that, again, completely free content, and the rest of the resources that we have available for you. This is just another sampling of the things that we provide to the community. So, like I said, lots of different courses on AttackIQ Academy. We do also publish a series of white papers and ebooks that you can pull down. Some of those dummies books have always been very popular. So you can pull down stuff like MITRE ATT&CK and purple teaming, things like that. So all really helpful resources for you. And then the last one here, I must have just clicked on a link in there. And the last bit that I would have in there is, there was one more question in there. That the KEV stands for known exploited rather than exploitable vulnerabilities. Put it a higher priority. It's going to be great to see exploitable, but not exploited yet. It's another question that I'm going to take back to my team and see if that's something that we are going to have on the roadmap. So definitely appreciate those questions there. That is stuff that I'm going to take back and answer for you. I think that covers off all of the questions that I have here. Anything else before we start to wrap up today?
Yeah, I think we are covered. So like I mentioned at the beginning, for anybody that joined late, we did record this session, and we'll be sharing it out over email tomorrow. You can also find it on our website tomorrow.
Yep. And I see one more question in there from VJ.
Me too.
Yeah, this is task-based.
Okay, awesome. So thank you everybody for joining us, and you all have a great day.